Welcome back to Pie the Corner. My name's Pat,
And I'm Shane.
and it's good to see y'all. And Happy New Year. How are
Mm,
you doing,
Happy
Shane?
Happy New Year. I'm doing good. Good to see you.
You too, man. It's been actually I hadn't seen you since last year. Har
Yeah,
har har.
indeed. Today's January 2nd. This is our first podcast of the new year. We've been doing this about a year now, so a happy first anniversary to you there, Pat.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
You know,
That's
it's
pretty
pretty
crazy.
it's pretty cool. We had no kind of real idea how this was going to go when we started, because when we started it was our very first time to do anything like this. And we had high hopes and high expectations, but who knew we would be doing it a year later? I think no matter what, listenership, viewership, or anything, just to still be doing it a year later is a success in my book. And I'm real pleased with both of us for keeping it going.
Yeah, I'm glad we are doing that. We did have some lulls in there, and I think that
Hmm.
was sort of some natural things, some pauses we took based on how things were going, what each of us was doing, but we kept pushing back and going back to it. So I'm really happy about that. And funny enough, like you said, it is now like 1 year we've been doing it, and I mean almost to the day. I think January 3rd of last year was the first day that we did it. So yeah, it's great. I think it's a great medium. I'm glad we're still rolling.
Right on, right on. Uh, so yeah, the end of 2020, right?
Yeah,
A lot of people have been kind of wishing 2020 would end, and here we are, 2 days into 21, and things are so much better. you know, it's I hate to say it, but we still have a long slog, dude. We got to get through winter. The distribution of the vaccine evidently is kind of turning into a clusterfuck and going real slow right now. The whole Operation Warp Speed thing was supposed to distribute 20 million vaccines by the end of December, and they only distributed 3 million. It's all kinds of logistical things. You have to wonder if the Trump administration is trying to sabotage the Biden administration by
yeah,
hindering the rollout of the vaccine. But my point is that good that people are really wanting to come out of 2021 will not come until the vaccine is widespread, distributed in a widespread manner.
yeah. And it's funny enough. Like my kids were with me on the 31st, and when we stayed up late, even though they're pretty young, but my youngest daughter said, right at 12, I was like, okay, Happy New Year. It's New Year now. And she said, okay, does that mean that coronavirus is gone now? And, it's such like an innocent child thing to say, but I think a lot of people felt that. I mean, I don't know if everybody, I don't think that a lot of people honestly believe that like it was just going to go away, but it's
Hmm.
been such a long year since
Yeah.
March that it was just kind of like, oh, 2020 sucks, 2020 this, 2020 that.
Hmm.
And so here we are, and it's like we're really, I mean, again, the date change and the year
Hmm.
change to me doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just like we're just still in the same midst of all of the crap that we've been in the midst of. So
Yeah. It's like, but you can get this collective desire to turn the page. That's what it's all about. And every year, there's this renewal, the hopes to come for the new year. So I get, even though I tease, I get where it's all coming from.
yeah,
There's just this huge collective urge to just turn the page and put it behind us.
yeah.
And we just gotta keep on keeping on, and it'll happen when it happens, and hopefully we can do the best we can to make it happen sooner than later.
Well, and I think miraculously, if you want to look at it that way, a lot of it was in my mind tied to, okay, well, we know that, we're sitting there in March, and it was just like, what is this thing? What's going on? What is this going to be like? And everybody was like, well, it takes a year to 18 months to develop a vaccine. So I think, it was just, it's like a point along the way to say, okay, we got through that last,
Hmm.
9 months, and it's just, we're almost there. And fortunately we did get several vaccines that came out, and You know, like you said, there's been some challenges with the rollout, and that sucks. But I think overall, you know, like on one hand, like I'm kind of like I'm not anxious to take it. I'm going to take it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like kind of like sitting there just like, okay, I know that all these people are taking it. Let's see what happens, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Absolutely.
Because even though I'm not one of those like anti-vax people, you know, you hear enough shit and you start to think like, well, what if there is something wrong with it? What if people start getting really sick? And if there are some reactions, but of the number of people that have been vaccinated, it's a very, very small amount, which is
Mm-hmm.
always the case that it can happen. So, you know, that's one part that I'm kind of like, I'm not like, you know, pounding on the door of my doctor saying, give me a vaccine. I'm just still like you are. I think like you and I have both been being very conscious about how I'm
Mm-hmm.
interacting with the world, you know?
Absolutely, and I'll continue to do that once the vaccines are released to the public, and that is, are you going to take the vaccine? Okay, I've
Yeah.
been asked that so many times over the last couple of weeks. You know, probably, you know, who knows, but maybe every day. Okay, and you know, the first thing I say is, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but you just said the same thing. Who wouldn't want to take a cautious approach? This is basically they're they're we're getting real-time human trials over a huge sample size, okay? So we're gonna see if there's something there or not, and once confidence builds, you know, hopefully more and more people take it, and a lot of the people that are kind of being even more scared than us will end up taking it, because there's going to be a lot of activities where a vaccine is required to do to you know, whether it's to put your kids in school, just like all the other vaccines, or you know, to fly.
Yeah.
Maybe I would think the Republicans would prevent this, but maybe you'd have to have a vaccine to work for a certain company. Just for, I don't know.
Well, and I think, yeah, and I think some companies might go that way. And they just make that decision, like you have to get it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, man. Like, I think that's one of those big areas that causes the most concern for these anti-vaxxers, is to say, oh, see, they're going to make us take it, and they're going to make us get have a card, and it's like this, you know, it's the rollout of the worldwide tyranny that we've been
Hmm.
telling you about. And I don't believe that, but I mean, I know that it's going to potentially cause some issues, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's going to lead to some less than stellar turnout for these vaccines, and
Yeah,
that's concerning.
there's no doubt about that, but I want to raise another point. When you have to take your kids to school, you have to a new school or a new school district, you have to show proof of their vaccinations.
That's true. That's
Nobody's
true.
ever resisted that. I mean, some people resist it, but
Oh yeah.
most people don't resist that. So that's an example of us already doing what people say we can't do, or else it'll be government overreach.
Yeah. I certainly had to do that. You know, and they were even went as far, like at first, to call me and say, well, we were looking at this and it says that, you know, your daughter's missing the MMR, blah blah blah, and she wasn't. And I took it to, you know, went to the doctor, got the documentation, but even at that point, I was like, well, you know, I don't legally have to do this. I tried to pull this thing, and they're like, well, that's true, but you know, still, it's, you know, we do want you to have them to go to this school, you know.
Hmm.
So like that school district, the school district I'm in, sort of made that call, like, yes, we will require it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I mean, it obviously, I think the kids and what is it? It's like children and whoever else are like the last to get it.
Hmm.
They're under 16 or something like that, and you know, so there's like trials that are going to start up for that. But man, like I talked to my mom about it, you know, and she used to be a nurse, and she's like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it for
Hmm.
the sake of, you know, I'm 84 years old. I live in this retirement community, and you know, if something happens to me, then something happens to me. I'm doing it for the greater good, you know,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the way I'm taking it. I mean, you know, shit, we can't. I don't think things are going to go back to normal until we get at least close to some kind of herd immunity, which
Hmm.
sounds like now is like going to be impossible, but eventually this will start to work, and I think we'll get there. But it is just like a kind of a still of a stressful time, right, that we're in.
Okay. I predict people are gonna wear masks throughout the whole damn year. I mean, certain people, there's not gonna, some people won't, but you're gonna see masks everywhere for the rest of 2021.
Well, and maybe beyond, because people are seeing like how well it can prevent you from getting other things like the flu
Mm-hmm.
and colds and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it'll be hard I think some people will just do it for that efficacy of like, hey, I know that this will prevent disease anyways. And then
Mm-hmm.
some people are just going to be scared to death to not do it. And then, of course, there's some people that haven't done it and will continue to not do it. And they don't give a shit. And they'll go out on New Year's Eve and pack a bar and just be like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
humanity.
yeah, I know it's the craziest thing to see. People, asserting their freedoms, ignorance and all. I guess you saw that footage of Sixth Street and stuff.
Yeah, I did.
No surprise there, dude.
No, I mean, it's, in some ways it was a little surprising because it wasn't the people doing it. It was just like, it's one night of the year. You miss one New Year's Eve. I know that you're young and you think like, I can never miss New Year's. Believe me, when you get over 30, you're going to miss a lot of fucking New Year's Eves. Especially if you have a family or something, it ain't going to be like what you have now. And maybe that's the idea, is like, well, I don't want to miss one now, but it's like, dude, get over it. It's
Yeah.
fucking one night a year. You're going to have it every year. It's not like in next year you won't be able to. And I think it's just some sort of, maybe it is just some sort of human trait to just defy authority. And it's like, this is the only way I can do that. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
conformist in my daily life. So I'm going to say no on this one and just do whatever the fuck I want. I don't know. But yeah, it's a little, it's surprising, but not surprising in some ways. But
Cool. What
but I
else
think,
what else
oh
you
no,
want to talk about?
well, I think some of the other hope that people had was sort of things with the political system would die down and shit. Of course, that's never going to happen. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it'll ever happen. And the new year brings, like, there was a point, a couple of days ago, when I thought, despite it doesn't matter what you lean, left or right. I certainly lean more left, but um, there's like this sense of like, okay, things have calmed down. We're not hearing from, the president too much on this crazy shit. And I can feel like, okay, like people were starting to just move on. But then, of course, now it's getting ramped up because of what's going to happen on Tuesday and then on Wednesday. And so, meaning Tuesday is the Georgia election, Wednesday is the certification. And now, so it ramps up again. And then, they defy him on his veto on the defense bill. So he ramps it up again and ramps up the bullshit again. They defy the $2,000 checks. Things get ramped up again. And so there was a moment where I was starting to think like, okay, like things will start to kind of ease off once this is all done on January 20th. But again, it's the same thing as like this arbitrary date where I just go, okay, things are going to be better after this date. They're probably not, but it's just it's an interesting time we live in, and I think there's just plenty of anxiety and shit to go around.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I on two levels, people are yearning for things to go back to normal. One, due to the pandemic, and two, the Trump administration. So we have these two trajectories where people, even if normal wasn't particularly good, people just want things to go back to the way they are, kind of what they're used to, that
Yeah.
that familiar feeling, if you will, because that feels a whole lot better than, all this tumultuous activities and kind of rocking the boat and
Yeah.
wondering if, like, for instance, a president literally disputing an election and threatening to refuse to leave the White House. You can't get more chaotic than that, dude. It's
Yeah.
like it's just frighteningly scary.
It's never
Anywhere.
happened. right? It's never happened for us,
No.
certainly. Um, yeah, I mean, I know we cover this
So
topic.
my point is January 20th, when he's inaugurated, that will be over. So things will be better in some sense January 20th, no matter what some of these crazy liberal naysayers on Twitter say.
Yeah.
You know, it's things will be better. Things don't always proceed at the pace that you want them to get better at, but I think it's undeniable that's a step in the right direction. It's a step in a better direction. And I'm not I had a kind of I was daydreaming the other day about what if the Democrats win both seats in the Georgia elections. So then we'll have a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate, by one vote, the vice president's vote, and then we'll have a small majority. I really don't mean to say we, I don't mean that, but the Democrats.
I know what you mean.
But I don't like falling into that trap because I do not identify as part of that group or feel like I have anything in common with that group of people. Unfortunately, they were the opposition party that I needed to get elected to get Trump out of office, and so I guess that's where I fell into we. But I just really, we both feel the same way on that. So the Democrats will have a slight majority in the House too. I was daydreaming, what if they continue to do nothing, just like the federal government has been doing for a long time now, probably I don't know, all the way back to the Clinton years. How do you think people will take that, dude? It just really seems to me like we live in a time where the government needs to do something for the people, whether it's a huge infrastructure plan, just some kind of American renewal, not to mention pandemic relief. What if they drag the ball on pandemic relief? What if they don't just really kind of come up with some kind of jobs program? Where does that leave us, dude?
A couple of thoughts. I did have some thoughts on that actually. Because first of all, I thought if they win both of those seats, first thing that's going to happen is Trump and all the Republicans are going to go, see, it's fraudulent, it's stolen, it's another stolen election, and that my fear or concern is that might trigger some kind of violent stuff going on or violence.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that doesn't happen. I do sort of come down on this side of they're going to have all of that power, but I don't think that they're going to make much of a change. I don't think Biden wants that. I don't think Biden wants them to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in a, in a way that, of course he probably wants them to win, but he probably is like, oh shit, then we will have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And he is one of these people that he's almost made it seem pretty, he's been pretty forward out there about, I want things to just kind of go back to normal. I want it to, fundamentally things are not going to change, he said. And sorry, my dog's going crazy over here. I got a new dog, everybody. And,
awesome.
but yeah, I don't see that. For instance, I don't think that they're going to go. They might go after the $2,000 checks now if they do win because of how much that's been out there now, which is good because it shows you that people raising their voices and saying, no, we need this now might make them have to do that. He's already said he probably wouldn't do an executive order for forgiving student loan debt. So God knows he's certainly not going to probably want to put it to a vote anywhere or try and do something like that. I don't know. I feel like we're probably not going to get a whole lot from him, except for he's not going to tweet and make everybody, crazy. At least that's my thought. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess what I was wanting you to say, or what I'll just add to that, is that I don't think they can get away with that, dude. I think it will lead to more instability and social unrest. Maybe not hitting the streets, but just gaining political momentum of a movement towards certain things like Medicare for all. I don't think I don't think it's possible not to get Medicare for all if we get all three branches as Democrats. I don't think people will accept it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if we get all three branches Democrat, we'll get Medicare for all. Not because they give it to us, but because we finally demand it.
Yeah.
And let's take this back to like 1992 when the Clintons were trying to save us with health care, and then 2008 when Obama was trying to save us with health care. Neither one of those instances was there's this burgeoning movement where we were demanding health care now. That wasn't happening. They were basically trying to fix the healthcare system for economic reasons and give handouts to the insurance companies and all this shuffling of money.
Yeah.
It was never about public health. Now, due to the pandemic, and we can see, the racial economic divide in America has been so laid bare during the pandemic. I think people demand it this time, and so I'm kind of straddling both sides of the fence right now. I think in general they won't do anything, but I'm gonna kind of gamble and say that we'll get Medicare for all if we get all three branches Democrat because of that demand.
And maybe that's, I mean, I think that this is the whole thing that, someone like Jimmy Dore has been saying. It's like, this is the moment, this is the time where we do it or we lose the opportunity. And I think in a lot of cases that is true because
me too.
Right now, the whole public is going, hey, we need something. We're in the midst of this pandemic and things are going crazy. We're not getting money. We're not getting this. We're not getting that. So you have to do something, so it might be that moment that we have,
Well, let me give you an example. I have healthcare. I'm happy to have healthcare. I'm on the ACA, but and my costs are even relatively affordable, but it's just such a pain in the ass, dude. You want to go to the doctor, you got to make sure your doctor's in the network. You want to get a certain procedure done, they have to find another specialist to send you to and make sure that they're in network. You want to get and then if you want to get that procedure done, your insurance has to approve that procedure. And it's just for working people, we just want to go to the doctor and get it done, man. We deserve.
Like we can. Yeah.
And it's not a matter of paying for it. We're already paying for it, dude. It's just going to be a shifting of money from one place to another. A lot of people say that it would be cheaper. I'm not sure I really buy that just due to inefficiencies of government. But it would be I think it'd be a better user experience for almost everybody. And I still think that rich people will be able to buy luxury high-end insurance if they aren't happy with what Medicare for all is. So we're just going to get it, dude. And I didn't really intend to go that far down that tangent, but it is a pretty timely manner because it's the first time we've really fully debated it as a society. You've heard it like in policy circles, Medicare for all or single payer systems, but it's never kind of become a part of the zeitgeist or something where everybody, just massive amounts of people support it right now. And like 80% of Americans.
Yeah. And that crosses all those lines.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that, people on the Republican side can still talk about it like in a way like, no, this is some Democrat socialist plan. It's like, no, 70 to 80% of the country supports this. The only reason you don't is because you have, and there are probably people on the Democrat side that don't either for the same reason, is that they have donors that are saying we don't want that. And it's usually the insurance companies and shit like that. So yeah, I hope you're right. I think it would be great to finally cross that threshold and take that one thing off the table, but it's going to be a tough slog.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit here. I've been highly influenced by Heather Cox Richardson throughout the past year, both her lectures and her writings, and she kind of brought some to my attention lately as far as American political history and how we got to where we are today. And she traces it to Brown versus Topeka Board of Education whenever the ruling that desegregated America. After that ruling, politicians were able to kind of bait that fear that whites had of black and brown people and just stir it up into a pot. and use it to gain votes. And one of the biggest, and then civil rights too, one of the biggest arguments against Medicare for all or socialism in general, and this goes back to the 19th century, is that they're going to take white people's money and give it to black and brown people. That's another narrative that's going on right now. And it's kind of interesting that we're reckoning with the same thing during the, the racial reckoning that we're going through, last year, this year, continually, that we're trying to work out. And I fully believe her. It's documented. It's not just her opinion.
Yeah, sure.
So it just got me to thinking, because that's fair enough. I mean, I could understand why a lot of wealthy white people, which there's not that many, by the way, would be averse to taking white wealth and passing it off to black and brown people. But eventually, as a country and as a nation and as a society, we got to stop looking at ourselves this way and want everybody to be taken care of, dude. And we already pool our resources in so many different ways, and it's going to save us money. But I guess really I just wanted to share that with you, that a lot of the aversion to Medicare for all and national health care and other socialized programs go back to that same race issue in America, and a lot of people may not realize that.
Yeah, there's a definite well, it's one of those things that no one wants to admit or talk about, at least on that side. They don't want to admit that that's the reason. They make it like, oh, it's because it's going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
But it's really not about that. And a lot of this shit isn't about that. It's about, just what you said. It's hard to
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way before, man. So I figure if it's a new idea to me, it'll be a new idea to a lot of other people too. And I'm sure there's going to be tons of resistance in people's minds when they hear that concept, understandably. But, if you don't believe me, take a closer look into it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we could switch gears a little bit. We wanted to also talk a little bit about, and I think it really kind of feeds into all of this, is education and how, how our system of education was set up and what it's sort of done and led to this place. I feel like that people are unable to make a rational decision about something because they don't know how to do that. So they're easily led down those paths of, hey, you're going to lose this if you do this, because you're the one that's going to suffer. And, I feel like this really is laying at the feet of our school system going back to the 1850s when it started, our kind of our factory school type system. But yeah, so, I mean, I think it's a really important topic, one we haven't really covered in depth, but
no, it's true.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that right off the bat?
Okay. Well, throughout most of my life, people have run on platforms about, improving education, fixing the education system. It's something that everybody's behind, and that's kind of funny. Everybody's behind that, improving education for our kids, that we need a good education for all, that education uplifts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to the point where all the kids in America are taking these goofy standardized tests that don't measure anything or mean anything. They call it means testing, and you have to get a certain number of kids to pass those tests each year in order to maintain your current level of federal funding. And so the whole school year becomes nothing but an exercise in getting kids to pass this one test instead of teaching them how to think. Okay, so it's almost like we ran that trajectory of improving the education system as far as we possibly could, and we failed at it for like 20 years. It's time for reimagining of the school system. Question is, do we think it can be done through a massive federal program, a huge nationally coordinated federal program, which has failed us so miserably,
Yeah.
and in the past. The argument so that will be, no, it's really important for us to have national standards. I'm not so sure of that, really, man. I'm really not so sure of that. We don't have national standards anyway. If you want to compare like Beverly Hills to, you know,
The inner city
but
of,
fuck Iowa or something.
yeah, or yeah, or
There's no
that.
nationalized standards to those two educations. I think I'm just going to say a couple things just to get this conversation going. I think only we can fix the education system as parents, friends, teachers, but more or less locally and community based. We have to basically, it's the only way we can take control of ourselves but I don't know how that's done. But it seems like it's up to local places and communities and obviously the individual. But I mean, this is a little bit out of our trick house to say, okay, how are we going to reform education system? But it's still something that I wanted to talk about. Where do we start, dude? Where do we start? What could we even get the ball rolling to get it going in a better direction?
Well, this is that question in my, kind of run up to this, looking into the history of education system and what we have now. It's the same exact question I came to as, what does it even look like to be a good education system? What does that look like? And there's the Montessori schools, and I don't know if you've heard much about them. There are quite a few of those around Austin. And
Mm-hmm.
basically that's like the kids go to school. There's no really curriculum
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. The kids kind of determine what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that might be a little bit farther to, like where you want them to obviously learn how to read and write and do
Mm-hmm.
math, right?
Yeah.
But who decides what that is? And there has to be some standard, I suppose, to say like, okay, you can add, subtract, and multiply and divide, and you can read this book. But then, there's a part of that I like because, dude, there's so many, like the way that the school system was set up, it literally was set up to do one thing, and it was to uniform the way that what was learned and how it was learned, to make it so that the conformity into the society was almost like a forced guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted people to know what you told them that they needed to know, enough to run the machines and do the work. And that's kind of what it was really for. And it was, it became this thing of like, they made sure that kids all got put into that system. And I think maybe there was some part of it that had
Mm-hmm.
some good thought behind it, but like, hey, we want this standardized thing where we say they can all do this when they're done. But it did it in a way that was so rigid and so lacking in any ability for anybody to be creative, that it tends toward knocking the creativity out of kids. And I that's the problem, I think, is, like when you and I were in school, we had a music program and we had arts and at least I did in my school. I'm guessing you guys did too. They take a lot of that stuff out now. They don't do that
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a simple thing, but we spend an hour a week, if not, a couple times a week, in a music room where our music teacher would play music. We'd sing songs. You learn how to sing. You learn how to, sing together or whatever. And I mean, that's important shit. I mean, that can really, the idea of learning music and how to read music and things like that is a good way to form somebody's mind. It helps them solve
Mm-hmm.
problems. That is a problem solving thing. Same with sports or art, or anything that's sort of this extracurricular idea. And they lose their funding, so they take all that out. And then, like you said, now it's like, what is it? What's the test down here? The tax test or whatever it is, where
Mm-hmm.
it's, so I think at the very least, we need to have more funding for those programs and not call them extracurricular outside of school. Like, oh, well, if you want to do that crap, do it after school kind of thing. Make it part of the curriculum. It's something simple. It's like, well, my kid doesn't need to learn how to do music or art or whatever. It's like, whether they need to or not, they need to have exposure to things that are not
Mm-hmm.
I guess you'd say left-brained, like math and science and
Mm-hmm.
things like that are just like this rigid, like yes or no answer. You need them to have this abstract part in there, and I feel like that's what's been missing a lot for kids because my kids, for instance, any of that stuff has to take place outside of school. And if
Mm-hmm.
my daughter gets caught drawing in class, it's a problem. It's like she's in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
like she
Yeah.
talks a lot. She's always drawing, and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Good.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
want her to do those things. I want her to
Yeah.
express herself. So I think somehow adding some way for kids to express themselves in the school environment is important. I don't know if that's going to do it or not, but that's
Yeah.
my thought.
A lot of it, goes back to this great crusade that started with Reagan about cutting federal spending and stuff and cutting federal programs and getting the evil federal government out of our life. That led to a lot of cuts in school programs and stuff that made the
Forces
wood
them to
wood
change.
shop go away, or the automotive shop, or the sports, or the drama programs, or music, or everything you mentioned. And you're exactly right about every one of those things. I think what you said. I think that there was a point in time where it was the prevailing school of thought that we need to indoctrinate kids so they'll be good citizens, or when we were an immigrant community, so you could Americanize people and make us kind of become one people that kind of thought the same way. I think that that's kind of an outdated way of looking at things these days, but I don't think it was all malicious
Yeah.
at one point in time. But politicians and local leaders get a hand of that school curriculum, and they start pushing creationism versus evolutionism or fact-based stuff. That's really tough on the kids. It'd be nice if we could get all that extra shit out of their brains. Go back to the 3 R's like you mentioned: reading, writing, arithmetic. I think most people would believe that those are essential skills, even though a lot of people say, well, why am I going to need this outside of school? I think it's essential for the development of the human brain. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with
So
that.
we have the reading, writing, arithmetic. History is real touchy because who's down history. History will always be imperfect, but you have to come up with some version of history to teach. But here's my thing, and this is why we talk, because it allows me to really get my ideas in my head. The solution is teaching kids how to think, how to critically think and analyze, and how to problem solve.
Yes.
Those are the two and most important things in school. Okay. And we've gotten farthest away from those two things, the most important things, than we probably have ever been in the history of American education. Ditch all these goddamn tests. Just get rid of them, throw them away, save the money, put it back, save the money that we do on all the testings and put them back into extracurricular programs. But we have to come to agreement and present programs and teach kids how to think and problem solve again, because that critical thinking will enable us to get through this morass of media we live in these days, and be able to look and see what's real and what's not real, and analyze different sources, and compile just tons of data to make our own mind. That's critical thinking. That's creative thinking. That's analysis. That skill is not taught. I remember when that skill was being taught to me as a kid. It was some of the hardest things for me to get into my brain, because I was a very math or music oriented person.
Sure.
I wasn't able to read. I wasn't good at book reports. I wasn't good at doing research projects where I had to bring, I wasn't good at that until they made me to do it. And then I developed the skills at it, and I got very good at it. But I remember those were some of the only hard things I ever had to do in school, dude. But look where it got me today.
Because it challenged
Yes,
what
yeah,
you
and
did.
everything was easy for me, so I didn't like being challenged. I just wanted to move on to the easy stuff like math, or science, or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And used to rack my brain over that, but evidently it did some good, and I wish they would get back to that.
No, I
Uh,
think that's so critical. That's it. I mean, really, it's like, do they want to? I mean, because this again, like I think it does go to a community level. Like it has to be the community that says we need to do this with our funding or with what we want to teach our kids. But then that problem comes up is like, who decides that? Who gets?
hmm
But again, if anything, it shows like how important elections are when you actually are able to elect your
hmm
count your school boards and things. But that was the one thing, and like for me too, like I kind of resisted a lot of that shit in school, and I was not what you would consider a good student. But for somehow I picked it up because when I finally went back to college at 27, like I did great in college. I loved that environment, and it was liberal arts, education. I was a history major, so a lot of reading and a lot of research and a lot of writing,
hmm
and yeah, I mean, I think it's there is something to be said for a child's mind, at a certain stage might have difficulty kind of picking those things up, but man, they're not going to ever pick it up if you don't expose them to it.
Yeah.
They need to at least look at it and go, I don't get this, and have a good teacher say, well, let me show you, explain it to you. And look, man, like one problem I see now is I don't see teachers being super motivated to really like I mean, look, there's some good teachers, but there's also people that are just like, hey, this is what the state wants us to teach. This is what I'm teaching. And you sort of just have to accept it. And your kids are like put into the system and they're made to do that. And then it's like, it becomes the parents' prerogative to do it. But man, that's tough. It's
Well,
tough
you're
as a
right,
parent.
and what you're describing is an imperfect system, which it will always be, but we can make it better, and I think we can make it better just by making the curriculum better. Just average to bad teachers and all. We could improve the curriculum by making it more of this, like I said, the thinking analysis and then problem solving. Uh, so thinking analysis will make you critical, so you can analyze media. That's one of the most important skills in the world today, is
Yes.
being able to analyze media, and
Yeah.
and that's one of the most lacking skills when I look around me. Okay, problem solving. How do we make the world a better place? How do we lift this poverty up? There's so many problem solving things that we have to know that we're problem solvers before we can solve problems. And if you're in the habit of being problem solvers and doing difficult problems, you gain confidence and then you look for bigger problems. And I just really see it happening that way. Okay. I just wanted to touch on the problem solving again too. Back to critical analysis. Imagine if you had a whole society just well versed in reason and critical analysis skills, and then they look at the power and the elite and the government, and they see it for what it is, and they're not going to take it anymore. So they're going to say something about it, and they're going to do something about it, and they're going to vote, and the people in power aren't going to like that, so they might want to limit that.
Yeah. And I would even say, man, like if one benefit has come out of this whole pandemic situation, it's that people see that whole like this whole idea of the fabrics of society is a very thin veneer. It doesn't take much to kick it over the edge where then it's like every man or woman or whatever for themselves. And so I think that's why we are seeing this engagement is people are starting to go like their experience doesn't match what they're being told for once, even though they're still telling them that the experience is the same. They're going, no, it isn't. And I see this on the right and the left right now. A lot of people on the right and the left, like just regular citizens, are starting to get the sense of like, you're telling me this thing, but I know it's bullshit because that's not what I'm seeing in my community or what I'm feeling. And I mean, I hate it that we have to have something like this do that versus just an education system. But you're right in that is exactly, I think, what the main driver for that not happening is there's a section of society. Now, look, I just saw this the other day, this statistic that only 10% of the people in this country make over $100,000. Now that's still a lot of people, but that's a very small amount of people. Everybody thinks they're going to make $100,000 or more. Everybody thinks when they get older and get a job, they're going to be rich or they have a chance of being rich. The reality is most people don't get there, ever get to that level. And you can't keep selling them this bill of goods that, oh, these tax hikes that the Democrats want are going to affect you. They aren't going to affect you. They aren't going to affect you. Probably not. You have a 1 out of 10 chance of it affecting you. So, I mean, I think that this is the thing is there's a group of people, a system, and you could call it an oligarchy if you wanted to, in our country really is, that think that most people are too stupid to know what's good for them. So we're just going to tell them what they need to know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it's been run for a long time.
Yeah.
Is we're just going to give you enough to make you think everything's okay because you're really not too smart and you're probably not bright enough.
Yeah. That goes with the history of our country. And a lot of people don't realize that the people at the top really believe that they're the smartest and they should be the one left the decision making, that we don't want, quote unquote mob rule to where people who aren't as well versed as us making bad decisions.
Yes.
That's the history of our country. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think when they vote, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
It makes some difference, but it's not really how you enact policy. And we both know that.
Well, yeah, and I think that this is what we're seeing is that now that the voting has taken on this dynamic of, we're kind of sick of this shit dynamic, they're ratcheting up the like us versus them shit. And I think that that's really a deliberate thing to do. It's a fundraising technique, but it's also a way to keep the eye on, your neighbor versus the person that's bending you over and fucking you in the ass, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that's crude, but it is kind of like what I see happening is there's like a real concerted effort to make it like, no, they're, these demon liberals or these, fascist, conservatives, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's like, I mean, they went and they, I don't know who they are, but they messed with McConnell's house and they messed with Pelosi's house. And the message was the same, which is like, we want what's ours, and, that's going to scare the shit out of them. I don't saying I agree with that, but I mean, it's like, if you keep pushing it in the face of reality and you don't give people those skills to really know what's really going on, you're going to end up with some kind of shit like that. It could, like where it could get bad in this country, like, for them anyways.
Yeah. It remains to be seen. Let's just kind of talk a little bit more about the education thing. I think the pandemic allowed people to have a lot more free time than they've had in a long time. So they started paying attention again, or maybe for the first time ever. And I would posit that once you start paying attention and seeing things for what they really are, you probably never stop paying attention again. So that's good. That's good. It's almost like an awakening.
Yeah, and once you you turn that light on, you can't ever turn it off.
Yeah.
You'd basically have to delude yourself on purpose.
Yeah. So I think there's probably we're going to go into a period of more engagement over the next however many years than we've had in the last 40. And I think that's a real positive development because the only way we're going to get anything, including education reform, is through people's movements. That classic saying that Chomsky says a lot, I don't know if it's his saying or not, but change is not gifted from the top down, it's demanded from the bottom up. Until we make these demands, Medicare for all, education reform, whatever, I go to infrastructure too. Nothing's going to change, and by more people paying attention and more people being engaged, it can happen. Basically, everything's impossible until it happens.
Yeah, and I think we are up against. I mean, we people that do want this stuff to change. There is a strain of conservatism, and it really is part of that personality structure to really resist that. And whether it's good for them or not, like they, in some cases, I think that they can even resist things that are in their best interest. That's been said many times over the last several months. But so that's tough. It's like you have to reach out to your neighbor. You have to reach out to that person and be willing to have these discussions like we're
But
having.
you see how this ties into the education thing too. Education is not just the public school system. It's not just the university system. It's talking with your family, talking with your kids, talking with whoever you talk to. Okay.
Yeah.
And just shining a light on certain things, getting people to consider a different approach or a different way of looking at things or a change of perspective. That's part of education too. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we have conversations to educate ourselves and share thoughts that we had or things that we read somewhere with each other and other people that we talk to and listen to us. Okay.
Yeah.
This is education. I think tons of independent media is an avenue of education. That's why they do it, Pat.
Yeah.
And so it's a big part of why I want to do this. Okay. So you as a parent, I'm sure you do things all the time where you're trying to educate your kids on a daily basis, right? And
Sure.
like to be able to live in this world, because you're very hands-on with your kids and you're very thoughtful, and I know the way your brain works. I think a lot of parents aren't as active as that on a daily basis, and I don't know if we can ever fix that or not, but it just seems like we can, man, if it's just what we want to do.
Well, it's a choice.
Like parents talking to parents.
Yeah.
I just keep saying.
And I'll say I don't do enough of that. I mean, other than parents that I like are my family or whatever. But yeah, it's a choice, man. Like I made that choice because it was like, I know how it can be for a kid whose parents are like, working and not available. And so, and I'm not even really talking about my own parents because my parents did work a lot, but they made themselves available to me as far as answering questions. They taught me the best that they could, right from wrong. With my kids, like I find the best way to do it is to use things that they are interested in. My daughter, my oldest daughter just got interested in Star Wars, which was always a big thing for me. And I can talk about morality, good and bad. What does it mean? What happens to someone when they let their anger take over? What happened? And I mean, it's a real stylized kind of like a mythological take on it, but it's very real. It's a very real way to say like, yeah, you can get upset about this and you can be mad at this person, but if you let that take over your whole being, you're going to be the one that's suffering. Or what does it mean to do well, to do good for the society, or to do something good for somebody? So, I mean, it's trying to find those ways. And my daughter even asked me, like, what we were watching one of those movies, and she's like, is there something I should be getting from this? And I was just like, well, let me tell you.
I'm glad I thought you would never ask.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we have a little conversation about that. So, I mean, it's great that you can find those moments to, like you said, where they're not getting that in school necessarily, because there's just no time, is to say as a parent, like, well, this is what I believe. And, you're going to find your own way in this world too. And you might not believe it later, but this is what I believe now. And here's why, and, I'm not always right. I'm willing to, and this is, again, goes to those critical thinking skills and ability to think and feel and to say and to talk how you say what you believe, is that I'm okay with saying like, I was wrong there. I'm not one of those parents that's like my way or the highway. I don't, if I do something that's wrong or I shouldn't have done, I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you earlier. I was upset about something else. It wasn't you. So that the kid knows, like, hey, it's not, like, again, it's just about how do you inform them of the world that there's more to it than just like black and white. There is, I mean, because there's so many shades of gray, but like it's a pleasure to do, but it's also like, it's something I take very seriously. I have that role and I don't want to shy away from it. And, I'm not one of those like, well, I got a job over in, in Illinois. Sorry guys, I'll see you in 15 years, when you're, well, and I'll act like, we still have a relationship, but we don't, because I mean, and look, I don't knock that from happening. Sometimes it has to be the way it is.
Yeah.
But I made a decision that I'm going to be around them. So, I think it's in the bigger scheme of things, we need a system that works to teach them certain things, but also the family needs to teach them as well if they can. So
Yeah,
I think that's a
yeah.
big part of it too.
Have you ever found yourself telling your kids like they're not going to tell you about this in school, or don't talk to your teachers about
Oh
this, or
yeah.
et cetera, et
Oh
cetera?
yeah. Oh yeah. All the
See,
time.
see that to me that's probably some really shit education right there. If
Yeah.
you have to say that, you know what I mean?
Well, like when they talk to me, because it's usually something around something they learned about history, and they'll say, "Oh, I learned this about Christopher Columbus." Now I don't go way into it,
Hmm.
but I'm like, well, yeah, that's sort of true. That's sort of what happened. But there was a lot of people on the other side that got hurt from that, and here's why. And just to kind of get their minds thinking, because you don't at that age, you can't get too in depth because they just kind of glaze over and just like, huh? Like, I don't know what that means, but you give them those little nuggets of there's more than one side affected when this great thing happened. It was great for a lot of people, but it wasn't so great for everybody. So just keep that in mind when you're making decisions in life. What is that really doing downstream? Is that good for everyone, or is it just good for you? You got to be careful about that kind of stuff. So, but I have definitely done that for sure. Speaking of which, math, like the math that they finally went back to the math that you and I learned, like the, 5 plus 2 equals da da da, where they were doing this number line thing, which we couldn't figure out. And they finally went back to that. When we were teaching them at home, it was like, I don't know what this is, but this is how I do it. Here's this simple way. And they were like, oh, this is so easy. Why don't we do this? It's like,
Wow.
Wow. And it's just, these curriculums come up and they're like, well, give this a try. And it's this weird number line 10 base 10 shit. And you're just like, even as an adult, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I can't figure this out. I don't know what this is.
Wow.
So, it's good that they went back to it. But anyways, just an interesting tidbit of us just going, well, I don't know what this is, but let me teach you how I do it. And they pick it up real easy and they find like it's easier to do. And, I bet a lot of parents did that this recently. That's probably why they changed it back. They're like, all the parents are teaching them this other way.
So this will be fun to talk about. There's been a lot of controversy over the last weeks and months and year about the opening and closing of schools, what that means, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. And I was just reading something else on Twitter today about maybe some communities are about to close their schools down again, just do the post-holiday thing. A lot of communities are doing it for real small amounts of time, whether it's a week or whatever. Earlier in the year, last year, they were closed for quite a long amount of time, and it became not only an education issue, but a child care issue.
Yeah, big time.
And I posted on Twitter today, really just kind of seeing if anybody wanted to take the bait. I said, I think keeping the schools open was always more of a child care issue than an education issue. They act like they're so worried about the future educational well-being of their kids. All of a sudden,
yeah,
when they're not invested in their education at all. And these are working people. There's a lot of reasons the education system's fucked up in America. Picture mom and dad working, some families working 2 jobs. You get home from work, you cook dinner, put them in front of the TV, go to bed, whatever. And this is the way a lot of people live their lives. So it's a very complicated issue. But I'm just going back to that thing where I said, I think if we're really being honest, the reason we wanted to keep the schools open was for working people. And that may be okay. I just like a semblance of honesty in my world, which, sometimes hard to find on any given day.
I think that's really what it was. It was really just about how do we keep people in the workforce?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean,
and it's reasonable. It's reasonable, right? Because this is what we've relied on for child care since time immemorial. And
totally
we may not have always looked at it that way, but that's what it was.
And a lot of people don't. I mean, dude, most people don't work for a company or they don't have employment that is going to be like, we understand. We'll help you out. Yeah. Most people, it's like either you work or you don't work.
Yeah.
And that is a terrible, terrible situation to put people in when you don't help them. This is the whole thing with the 2000. We should have been getting $2,000 fucking dollars for every month for the last 6-7 months. That would have been like, we can stop this, you
I
know?
want to stop you right there because this is a really important point to make. Early on, when we did the $3 trillion giveaway, was it Paulson? He said that we can print as much money as needed.
Yeah.
Okay, and we did that in 2008. We did it this time, and we basically learned that anytime we want, we can print as much money as possible, and it'll work out in the wash. They could have done that for repeated stimulus payments on monthly to monthly basis, which they should have. But mark my words, dude, the reason that they didn't do that is because they don't want America to be feeling like a socialist country, getting all the benefits of a socialist country where the government has the resources and the will to take care of its people.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental reason, dude. I'll swear by it till the day I die.
100%.
They don't want people to get any ideas, man.
Well, you said that at the beginning too.
Okay, well, it's so true to me now, especially watching McConnell speak this week when he has the gall to say that he's not signing the checks because it would be nothing more than socialism for the rich, which he is for, dude. That's what his whole life has been spent doing, is socialism for the rich. Now, like one of the few times in human history, the working people are standing up and speaking up and asking for a very modest handout. He's saying, nope, I can't do it because that would be giving money to the rich. Just think about that, dude.
Yeah, dude, I know. It's this again, it's so ridiculous to even hear it. It's just like, you're talking to nobody. You are not, no one is hearing that and going, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. And no, you said that. I remember you saying that back in March and April. You were like, and it's true. And it's true then, it's true now. It's like, dude, they don't want people to get a whiff of that and know what that's like. I mean, every other, well, I would say 90% of Western civilization is doing that right now. Most countries are giving payments to their people to stay home.
Countries that are way poorer than America.
Yes.
I mean, even though we call them Western civilized democracies, they have a way smaller economy than America, man. Way smaller.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and they have a lot less.
So that raises this thing where, any living, breathing human being that's paying attention, American, if they can do it there, why can't we do it here? And more people, kind of figured that out. And things are going to change, man. A lot of things are going to change really for the rest of our life because of this pandemic. This pandemic is an inflection point in our lives. There's probably been a handful of them in our lives, historical inflection points and some big ones. I think this is probably the biggest one, dude, in our lives. Bigger than 9/11.
Well, and a Stoic would say that destiny sometimes will always arrive by appointment. And, sometimes it's just maybe, it is a terrible situation, but sometimes those terrible situations can have something that it brings something else that, can cause these kinds, like you said, an inflection point. And if we can look at it in any way as a positive, it's kind of torn the lid off of those that sort of oligarchy or aristocracy's way of sort of keeping things hidden that, they can't help you. I'm sorry, I can't help you. You need to help yourself. Because it's like everyone knows, no, you help each other just fine. It's like as long as it's a billionaire, you'll give him plenty of money. But and that's what Bernie Sanders had that wonderful. I don't know if you saw any of that, him on the Senate floor with the checks, bringing out like, you talk about not helping people, but here's Amazon got $165 million.
Yeah.
Here's Dell, or not Dell, like AT&T or whoever, and it's just like, you can't say that. It's just not true. So.
I hope some people saw that, dude. I hope some regular working people saw that, because that was a powerful display, dude.
Yeah, 100%. Well, hey, I think we could probably wrap it up now. Great conversation. That was a really good one. It's great to get back into it in a new year.
And dude,
let's hopefully we can well, not hopefully. Let's just keep going. Let's keep pushing forward. Any final thoughts?
just to remind y'all folks, we're generally doing this twice a week. We try to do them on Saturdays, and they're usually posted the same day. Today, I just onboarded the PTC Pie the Corner podcast platform to Substack. So if you go to ptcpodcast.substack.com, you can subscribe to us there. Check us out. We're probably going to start blogging there too, writing a little bit of stuff. Me and Pat both are liberal arts guys. We're both good writers. We like to write. So look forward to new content in the future. And I don't know. That's about all I have.
Great. Sounds good. Remember to catch us on all the podcasting platforms and YouTube, and like and share, and give us some feedback if you want. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, y'all.